Exactly 11 months ago, I talked about the Wolverine V3 Pro, and this is the successor to that controller. Before we go any further, 50% of the potential customers needs to stop watching the video now. And I hate to say it, the one reason is this one is no longer Xbox licensed. That is a pretty big difference versus the previous model, and I didn't want to force you into a video that you don't have to watch to find out that it won't work for your Xbox. So there it is, it's said, let's carry forward. Now the one I have here for review has been sent by Razer. That has no impact on my opinions, no money changed hands, and they see the video at the same time as everybody else. Much like the previous V3, comes with pretty nice pouch. We also have that little booklet. Comes with stickers and some legalese and some specs and listing of what's inside, and the pretty long USB-A to USB-C braided cable. A pretty nice cable, has this little strap here to keep it together, a Razer logo at the top, nothing at the bottom. We have something to hold the controller in place, some nice little rubber pads. We have two replacement caps, one mushroom style, so much like what you had on your PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and PlayStation 3. And here we have another concave style, but that one is taller. And last but not least, we have our dongle here, which should support up to 8K pulling rate, which we'll test. But we also don't have a 3.5mm jack. The pulling rate is much higher. And the stick module is also different. We're now using TMR. It will prevent drift in your games. Essentially Hall Effect 2.0, just a better manufactured, a better reliable Hall Effect kind of stick. So this is what we have here. And this is also the first time that we see TMR for Razer and a console style controller, but not for the first time as a whole for the brand. When it comes to the grip and feel, you have a little bit of texture here that is not exactly the same throughout the whole surface. It gets tighter here and it spreads out the more you go to the edge of the controller. It is kind of soft, but not quite. Feels like a very, very fine sandpaper, like not quite, but feels nice. Like it's nice to the touch. And the backing feels, I want to say, about the same. You also have a bit of texture in your back paddles. No textures on your bumpers and shoulders or the extra buttons here. Your face buttons are also no longer glossy. That's something that was also different. That's one thing that I praised the previous model for, that it had pretty much a different feel everywhere. I feel like they toned it down a little bit here. There's less distinction points on this controller as you hold it. The main two ones is going to be the grip, and then everything else kind of feels a little more the same. The D-pad feels like the shell. The face buttons feel like the shell. They do have a little bit of texture here though that will help differentiate them. But yeah, essentially what I'm trying to say is it's a controller that feels kind of more similar across the board. Triggers, they don't mention if it's Hall Effect. I don't think it would be a traditional analog. They just don't say. But one thing they call it is their Pro Hyper trigger. And you have a hair trigger here, which is going to be a fairly short travel, button activated. Sounds like a micro switch actually. And if you pull off the hair trigger here, you have a full trigger with a little bit of dampening. Your face buttons, they call it mecha tactile. They feel a little stiffer. They have nice travel still. I do like them. They feel very nice as a whole. Like a mouse click that has a membrane on top. For the D-pad, once again, we have no center pivot. I would assume they probably use the same mecha tactile switch here. It feels about the same as the buttons, but of course, we're talking about a D-pad. Your sticks will click. They click fairly nicely from everywhere. Your bumpers will also click from everywhere. Those, I'm pretty sure, are dome style bumpers. Those are micro switches for sure. So probably the Razer mouse clicks. And same goes for your back paddles here. That feels good. Like in terms of like your inputs and everything, it does feel good. It feels nice. It feels premium. But there is one more thing that they removed versus the previous one, is that we no longer have rumble, something that is fairly common into the competitive scene. It is the case here as well. The USB also now has a cable guard, which I'm not personally a big fan of because I always use the same cable. Hopefully it's going to work. Yes, it will. Let's go. So I'm happy about that. But yeah, I'm not usually the biggest fan of cable guards. You do have one here. I do like that even though there is a cable guard, it's fairly wide. So, you know, it's probably not going to be as bad as some other options, just compatibility with your USB cable. But there is a chance if you tend to use a specific cable that you like, as is the case with me, that you may not be able to fit it. I'm actually quite happy that it does. But as you can see here, you don't necessarily have to use it wired all the time if you go for the Pro version. And that's another difference versus the previous model, is now they released both the Pro and the Tournament Edition at the same time. The Pro goes for 199 USD, much like the previous model. The Tournament Edition goes for 119.99. The big difference here is that you're not gonna have to wait a couple of weeks to get the Tournament Edition. You can choose whichever you want from the jump. Probably not going to be my go-to in terms of ergonomics. I get it a little more having used the previous one. If you're a clawer, that's a controller that could be quite nice. It definitely works better in that case. It's not so much that it is uncomfortable to hold. It's actually a very comfortable controller. It pushes you into a grip if you're going to be holding it like regular standard style. If you hold it with claw, it's a little easier to work with, especially if you want to use all three bumpers. What I'm trying to say is this is not a controller that will work for everybody. I would caution people that have never had a Wolverine V3 to just expect a shift in ergonomics and just the way to hold it. It doesn't feel like your typical Xbox controller. There's a little bit of a learning curve on how you're going to want to hold it. And if you're going to claw, it's going to come very naturally. If you're standard, it might take a little bit of time. I tend to cramp on this controller. We don't have any gyro. Also no longer have the 3.5mm jack. Focusing on performance, quality components, going for that competitive scene, all the fluff, all the extracurricular, so to speak, is just, it's gone. It's no longer part of this product line, or at least if it will be in the future, maybe they will divide the two. One more thing that I should specify, this controller does not have Bluetooth. So if you're hoping to connect it on Bluetooth, you cannot. So it's either wired or using your dongle. Let's jump into Razer's own software, Synapse. Okay, so once you have Synapse opened, you should see it right up there. And as you click on it, you'll be able to address the controller. If you have a Razer mouse, you'll feel right at home. Up left, you have your different profiles, and you can have up to 4 profiles, and you can also easily swap using the shortcuts that we can see here. Triple dot will let you link games, rename your profiles, reset your profiles. So when looking at your extra buttons, you can do keyboard recording. That's a pretty nice touch. And you can do multiple keys recordings. For example, here I have Control plus Alt plus S. Let's try to see if we can do 3 keys. Yes, we can. Can we do 4? No. Okay, so we can do up to 3 keys on one button. That's pretty nice. We can, of course, do controller keys. So you have a bunch of different options here, as you can see. And the clutch setting is back, which is a pretty nice touch. And I'll cover that in a second. You can also just disable it altogether. But you could also use the shortcut on the controller itself. So that little circle, that bottom button, is what you're going to use to do these types of switches. So if I push the circle button and I push the back paddle, and right now I do X and push the circle again, it just locked it to X, and you can see that it also changed in the software. So we'll try doing the exact same thing. We'll do the circle and the same paddle, and this time we'll do X and A, and we'll do the circle, and it's just going to record one button. So even though you can have 2 buttons, that is only for keyboard functions. If you're doing controller, it's not going to let you map multiple keys. It makes sense, right? It makes all the sense in the world. This is supposed to be a competitive style controller, so it would be logical that they don't let you do that. All the paddles you can address, but you cannot address all of the buttons on your controller. So you couldn't make A be X, for example, or make LT be RT, something like that. You don't have that possibility. You can address the pulling rate. Of course, we'll put 8,000 because we want to test this controller. And by the way, I didn't mention it. I did say that we had a battery, but according to the documentation provided by Razer, the battery at 8K pulling rate, which is going to use more battery, is rated to up to 36 hours. Quite a lot, especially at such a high pulling rate. When looking at D-pad, you have the ability between 4-way and 8-way, and I'll show you, you know what, let me show you right now what it is. Okay, so you see how right now if I push down and I push to the right, you can do an adjacent key at the same time, right? If we were to lock it at 4-way, I'm going to activate the 4-way D-pad direction. Same thing, you'll notice now that as I push down, if I try to go to the adjacent directions, it's no longer working. So you're being locked in that direction. For example, Mortal Kombat would probably work better on a 4-way, whereas Street Fighter would potentially work better on an 8-way. That actually might depend on the character. If you're playing Guile, you're probably going to like the 4-way. If you're playing Ryu or Ken, you're probably going to prefer the 8-way. Here we have what they call the sensitivity, but what it is really is the dead zone. So if you put no dead zone, it's going to become super sensitive. Like you can pretty much sneeze on the stick and it's going to register. For the sake of testing, I'm going to leave my left stick at 0, but I'm going to put my right stick at just 3%. Usually 0 is probably a little too low. You want to go like just 1 above. That should be more than enough. But you can see here that it's still quite sensitive, even at 3%. So if you're playing a game where that might cause issues, you could probably bump it up to 5%. Circularity mode is something I personally consider to be very important. So it doesn't show here in the glyphs, but standard will operate as the axes, x-axis and y-axis would, which makes it a square as opposed to a circle like what a stick looks like. So there are games that will register values outside of that circle. If you keep standard, it's, even though it doesn't show it, it's going to allow us to go past it. So let me show you again in the soft end gamepad tester. If I test the circularity here, you'll see that it lets me get past the circle. Whereas if I adjust it in the software and put it on circular, you'll notice now that it gives me a perfect circle. And that'll depend on people. Personally, I prefer raw because to me, it gives me a more linear curve, which means that the more I push, the more it's going to retain its linearity when going to the edges of the perceived value. And so that's why I personally prefer raw. Like a good circular tweaked stick will give you maybe a more one-to-one feel of the physical aspect, whereas I feel like a raw will give you a more one-to-one data aspect. And to me, that's kind of like what I'm used to. I prefer to work off of data than the physical aspect, but play with both, see what works for you. Sensitivity clutch, I mentioned it. First of all, you need to map a button. So I'm just going to map the M1 right here to the sensitivity clutch, and you can either do the left stick sensitivity clutch, the right stick, or both of them. So just for the sake of argument, I'm going to put both of them, but you can address the intensity. And let me show you in the sensitivity clutch itself. So what it does is if I push my left stick, you'll notice that it moves. And if I hold the button, all of a sudden, it doesn't let me push all the way. So what it'll do, for example, say you're using a sniper and you're aiming with your right stick, but whenever you hold the sensitivity clutch, you want to prevent your movement, even though you push your stick all the way. That's what the sensitivity clutch is for. And you can increase the intensity. You can make it even tighter, as you can see here, or you can make it close. Oops, I didn't install my stick correctly. And by the way, there's just a little arrow. That's going to be hard to see. There's just like a little arrow that you can line up with your controller whenever you're installing your sticks. There you go, like that. You can just adjust that based off of whatever you prefer with the clutch. This is a pretty powerful tool in the right hands. Power, that's very simple, very straightforward. It'll say how long it's going to last before it powers off. And then if you need to recalibrate your sticks, that's where you want to do it. I'll go ahead and do especially my right stick. And then you also have a bunch of other settings that are mainly for Synapse if you look top right. If you do get this controller, just make sure to look at your options, see what you can do. But the important thing we went over, let's move towards audio test. And no, we do not. No tremors at all. No axis snapping. I mean, that would be expected. Snap back. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. A whole lot of it. I skipped the circles because we did it previously during the software portion. If we look at inner dead zone, if we remove it all the way, right? This is something that you can adjust. But if you remove it all the way, you really have no dead zones at all. As for gap dead zone, based off of how little I was able to get an increment, I would say no. For outer dead zone, I'm definitely seeing a little bit of it. It's not a whole lot, but there is some. There is a little bit of outer dead zone. Just to clarify, that is indeed on the raw value. Like I could have expected that on the corrected value, but on the raw, yeah, there is a little bit of outer dead zone. For tension, we are at 65 TGF. And when looking at stick resolution, we are at 0.001. Pretty up there versus what the best of the market currently offers. Let's talk D-pad. Diagonal focus. I mean, we have a pretty short travel, tactile-like, feels maybe a bit more like a micro switch, like I was saying earlier. Not necessarily the best for like immediate flawless diagonal focus. Rolling test feels good, and I feel like they made those corners a little less sharp versus the previous model, which I really appreciate, because the previous model doing the rolling test, it would kind of sink into your thumb after a while. I don't feel like it is the case here, so that's an improvement here. Adjacent direction, we talked about it during the software portion, but yes, it's feasible if you want. It's also preventable if you don't. Accidental inputs. Yeah, like it's gonna be one that is gonna be hard to miss. Right now I am on the 8-way, just for the record, and I haven't seen a single one of them. And if jumping left and right, it's also very good. And again, just to prove that I'm on the 8-way, I am very much on the 8-way, but this is doing flawless for accidental inputs. I'm actually quite impressed. Pivot, we mentioned it earlier, there are no pivots because it's one of those controllers where it's always hot, so it feels like it's always under tension in the middle, which makes it super easy to go from left to right like on a whim. Actuating the D-pad from the center, yes, it's very, very easy to do. When talking triggers, start dead zone, and you'll notice in the app we didn't have any trigger settings, right? Do we have dead zone? A little bit, but it's not a whole lot, and it's really well dialed in. That's definitely something I can credit them on. And dead zone, oh man, what we have is so little that I would consider that to not be dead zone at this point. And so on the dampening, I mean, I don't think there's any dampening. I just feel like it's a super dense piece of plastic that probably acts as a stop, but there's so little vibration to it that it's not noisy. But I don't think it's proper dampening. This is actually quite well executed. And when looking at hair triggers, you have mouse click likes, hair trigger, very short travel, very satisfying, and I feel like the tension is easier to work with than the previous model. I would say you know, other than the feel, I feel comfortable saying across the board that even though a lot of things in their marketing presents it as being exactly the same, I'd say there are very minute differences that actually gives this one an edge in terms of the buttons. I'm just surprised. Maybe it would have become like too confusing to just say, oh, we improved that by a very small smidge, but I think they have. I think they have, because it's not exactly the same. Especially the triggers. The triggers felt good before, but they feel a little bit better for me here. Oh man, I can already feel it. I kind of wish they gave us the ability to change the curve, because now that I'm in aim labs, I feel like the curve might be just a little too aggressive, like not exactly linear. We'll see. And they do feel good. Yeah, okay. 33 on my first attempt. Look, guys, I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. This is not the most linear curve, okay? I'll just say it. But this is the first time that we have TMR and 8K put together. The only other 8K controller that I know of is paired with capacitive, and it's, you know, it's decent, but this is a cut above. Unfortunately, Razer doesn't let us address the curve, because to me it's not quite linear, and I don't test curve like that, but I'm sure someone will pick it up and will probably say that it ramps up a little bit at the bottom half. It's tweaking, you know, like the moment either you tweak the controller or you tweak yourself to the controller. And the moment that I tweak myself to this controller, woof, it's gonna be nasty. Man, it's wild how good the sticks feels paired with 8K. It really feels smooth. But I'm already starting to run into the issue that I had with the previous one, which is that I'm cramping. And I'm not even using the raised stick cap. It's that ergonomic that just doesn't work for me. Or maybe my hands are too small. So I'm going to do something like, funny enough, I actually claw, but not in shooters. I claw in like platformers and like, you know, action games, but not shooters. So I'm going to try to claw and see if that changes anything at all, because that grip is it's just not doing it for me. It's unfortunate because my accuracy was terrible. I think I might have done better than at least my second run, but my accuracy is where it falls greatly. Okay, so I'm on 8-way right now. I don't know if you guys will hear that. My skin grips to that plastic. It's weird because the feel is nice, and I think in fact that they improved it. And this is a D-pad I could definitely do fighters with, but I notice now when it's time to like do repeated movements, my skin is gripping to this D-pad. It's not a silent controller, okay? Just so we're clear. But you might enjoy that. I'm actually enjoying the clicks. But you hear them a lot. So this may not be for everyone. But as far as like the platforming experience, I like. Now, based on the previous game, that I expect should do fine. Oops. Okay, I was not focused. That's my bad. Jeez. This is going to sound weird, but this is so efficient at going from left to right that where I usually anticipate, here I don't need to. That's where I got my... Okay, that was just me being dumb, though. Genuinely, this is not a game issue right now or a controller issue. This is a skill issue. I need to adjust. This controller is so quick. This D-pad is so quick to left and right that I need to not anticipate like I would usually. See, like, that's me starting to understand the D-pad and what's at play. Oftentimes, I refer to how I feel like the trigger is pushing back. Here is the absolute opposite. I can't think of triggers that I've tried that have this low resistance, this low tension. So for long durations, I feel like if you're like intensively playing racing games and you're not doing it with a wheel, you're probably gonna love this controller. It's really, really nice to like just tune in your triggers, and they're super easy to push. They're also very easy to lock in, but they also don't push back. So I feel like fatigue or comfort is not gonna be an issue. This is probably some of the best triggers I felt on a controller, at least for modern style gaming. This doesn't feel retro at all, right? So if you're trying to get that experience from triggers, that is not it. But I think another use case here is if you like to keep your trigger hot in a game and not necessarily shoot, This is going to be one of those where as you progress with the controller, you're probably going to be able to not use hair triggers and be able to keep it hot if that's how you prefer to play. Because, man, those triggers are quite impressive. They're extremely well executed. All right, let's move towards the end of the video. Okay, when it comes to performance, we're not quite at the point where it's reaching 8K steady, but it has never done below 5000K. It's past anything else I've seen on the market. The part that caught me off guard is I went on dongle and I tried multiple ports just in case that it was something to do with my PC, and maybe it is. I'm not trying to say that it is guaranteed to, you know, be on Razer's. It could very well be with my hardware, but I just was not able to reach past 4000 on dongle. While it is still absolutely impressive, it is not quite what is being marketed, because as far as what I understand is being marketed is that you should be getting 8K both on wired or dongle. And again, I don't expect 8K just because I've never seen any controllers do 8K, but it's also lower on the dongle, at least in my experience. Let's make everything very, very clear here. I don't think it should matter. I don't think it should be considered a problem, but it's something you may want to know. It's a premium controller that will fit very well in people that play competitive PC games. I'd like to propose a challenging thought. If you're looking to get this controller, instead of buying the V3 Pro 8K, I would recommend that you get their Kishi V3 Pro instead. And look, I understand this may seem like a wild take, but as far as the quality of this controller, you're pretty much neck and neck with the V3 Pro, with one big difference, which could be a big difference for you, which is that this has a battery and a dongle, whereas this is wired only. But if you know that you're going to be playing this wired because you want the best performance, you might as well just get this, and you're going to be able to use it for your Android, you're going to be able to use it for your iPhone, even iPads, the smaller ones, or small form factor tablets like the Red Magic Astra or the Y700. Because this controller has TMR sticks like the V3 Pro 8K. It has up to 8K on PC, much like the other controller. It doesn't have two back buttons, but I would argue that for competitive fast response back buttons, these are better for that specifically. The ergonomics are also, in my opinion, personally better with the Kishi V3 Pro. I have been really taken aback by this controller because it's so good and it does so many things, even in the telescopic market, that we haven't seen from competitors yet. In my opinion, this is just as good a PC controller as the one I just reviewed. I know it's a weird conclusion to a controller review, but quite frankly, it's shocking how good this is. That's why I qualified it as best in class, and I really meant that it rivals PC controllers. It's that good. The Razer Wolverine V3 Pro 8K is probably not for me. The main thing is ergonomics, and I'm a rumble head. It's a little unfortunate for me that they removed it, but I get it. I get it. You have rumble here, but you don't on the Wolverine. So yeah, that's my conclusion. A great controller, just not for me because I cramp on it. I don't know what's happening with D-pad here. This is going to be a little unfortunate for the B-roll I'm going to have to capture, but oh well. It did burn from me just using it. That's so weird. It is on the pricier side as well, so I thought, you know, if you're going to be spending that money, why not go for a controller that will unlock so much more capabilities and potentially even show you a way of gaming that you didn't know you love until you try it. So don't knock it till you try it, as they say. And so that is my review of the Wolverine V3 Pro 8K. Let me know your comments. I do think they improved a great deal versus the previous model, and in many subtle ways, and some more ways that are obvious. But as a whole, I do think they improved it. I see the value, I see the quality, and if you pick one up, let me know your thoughts. As always, please consider hitting the like if you enjoyed this video, and to subscribe to not miss any future ones. My name is Clef, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.